Welcome, friends,
to the How-To Heretic.
I'm Uncle Mark.
And I'm Uncle Dan.
And I'm Uncle Doug.
And this is your user's guide to life on the outside.
That's right. Leaving religion, congratulations, is the first step into a larger, better world.
But it can also be a scary world. Things work differently now.
Never fear. That's why we're here.
We're your audio uncles. And with help from good friends and experts in all sorts of fields.
We're going to share the stories and seek the knowledge to build a great life.
After all, you only get the one that we know of, so you better make the most of it.
Damn skipping.
Fellas.
Howdy do.
Hello.
Boy, what a show. What a show. If you are triggered by the word Abraham,
Run.
Turn it off now.
Run.
Because, holy smokes, it's going to be a bad day for you. But if you are not, stick around, and you're going to hear it a lot, because I start off with the most important and deeply moral story in the Bible, Abraham and Isaac.
Yeah. Yeah, that's it's about as moral as the Bible gets, which is to say, not.
Not at all.
And then I am going to introduce us to an Abrahamic religion of sorts. And I'm not going to say anything more about that. You'll have to hear it later.
Exactly.
Well, and then I'm going to finish us off with a short little segment on the millstone in the shape of several rakes with a clown nose that is the Book of Abraham.
That's right. And for anyone who is angry about Doug not knowing the plural of the word papyrus, send that to him and not me. Okay? And a couple things. Obviously, our merch is still available. We got all kinds of great stuff going on over at our website. You just hit the Heretic button and you can buy your heart's delight slingshots, pointy Madonna-style braziers,
X-ray specs?
Yeah, rotisserie chickens, anything you want.
Yeah, sure.
And also, of course, our YouTube is getting pretty populated. So we've got, I think, I added it up, and I think we're at 1/3 of our segments are up there now.
Okay.
So it's a lot, so you can go find our YouTube if you like individual
Thanks
segments.
to Vern for that. That's awesome.
And also, of course, Facebook is going on. Our friend Joe over there has got the Facebook group. Apparently it's thriving. I don't go to Facebook because I'm a communist. And then, of course, we have a special announcement.
Boom.
Yeah, that we are coming up on our triple-versary. And yeah, and remember that according to Hallmark, the gift for the 3-year anniversary is massive Patreon cash.
Donations of money.
Don't Google it. Don't Google the Hallmark thing. Just trust me on this. So we're going to do a special thing on Sunday, September 27th at 1 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. We are going to record our show as usual, but you are invited.
Yes.
You are invited. So we're going to kind of do a normal-ish show. And if anybody's been part of the Zoom meetups that we've done, we're going to do, that's basically what we're doing, right? But you'll be part of it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you'll be part of it. You'll see what we're doing. We're not guaranteeing that you get on the show.
But you might, because there's going to be some audience participation.
Yes.
So, because it's a Zoom thing, and we want to put this on our YouTube channel as well, a couple precautions, and that would be that if you don't want your face or your name to be seen, but you still want to participate, in Zoom you can change your name before you come into the chat, right?
Yeah.
You can do that on screen, and if you're worried about your visage or your beautiful face being seen, Doug, you can put up like a picture of something else or something, can't you?
You can put up either nothing or a picture. So just there is. Anonymity is not hard to achieve. You just have to make sure to check the boxes to achieve it.
Don't be dumb and put up some dick pic or something, though. That's
no more dick pics.
Yeah, or all dick pics. I don't care.
Right.
But if you need to be anonymous, that's on you. And because we are going to post this, just be warned.
Yeah, participation. Just being there implies consent.
Yes, exactly. So you need to take those precautions if you need to. We don't want anybody to get in any trouble that isn't necessary. So that's going to be in a couple weeks. September 27th, we will send out, if you email us and say you want to be part of it, and just put Zoom in the headline, in the tag. What do you call that in an email?
Subject.
Thank you. Email us at howto@howtoheretic. Put Zoom in the subject line. We will send out the invitations the day before on Saturday the 26th. So don't worry if you don't see it till then.
And this is more of a live show than a Zoom hangout. This is going to be kind of seeing behind the curtain to how the sausage is made.
Yeah.
As
for
you
whatever
know,
that's worth.
All sausage is made behind a curtain. That's a fact in the sausage world.
That's a good thing. It's good to have a sausage curtain. So anyway, that's our special announcement. We'll keep reminding you in the coming weeks, the next couple of weeks, and then hopefully we'll see some of your beautiful faces on Sunday, September 27th at 1 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. Let's do a show. Woo.
Uncle Doug?
Uncle Dan.
Here's the thing. Usually, when the How To Heretic decides to crack open the pages of the good book, the bad book, as I like to call it, it's you or me talking about it.
That's true. That's kind of our specialty. Speciality.
Yeah.
But somebody else has, an interloper is amongst us. Someone is treading on our turf.
I decided to take a whack at it. And, one of the last times I did, for some reason, because there's a gas leak in my house, I decided to do the entire book of Ezekiel.
Yeah.
So this time I picked one that's a little shorter, a story that's a little bit shorter, and a little, well, the morality is certainly clear to me. I'll see if you guys agree with it. So let's dive in.
Well, I mean, if there's one thing about that book, it's that the morality is usually unassailable.
Completely, and that's why it's in every hotel room in America. So, none of us have children, guys, and please don't anybody say that I know of. I don't know how parents feel about their offspring deep in their hearts, but speaking for myself, I've never wanted to kill one, and since I'm not sure if that's even socially acceptable or legal, I'm going to err on the side of not killing a child just to be safe. But for seriouses, here in 2020, we have advanced to a point, I hope, where we can almost, at least of this recording, I haven't looked at his tweets for the last 5 minutes, agree that killing children is a bad thing and should be done with as little frequency and as much care as possible. Like us, they must be allowed to emerge from the beautiful dream and fun and discovery that is childhood into the cold, harsh light of adulthood and discover one thing at a time that everything sucks all for themselves. We'll talk about attitudes about killing children and how they may or may not have evolved over time in a second, but I want to mention what set my wheels grinding on this broader topic, oddly enough. Because everything isn't horrible enough. I spend way more time than I should on Twitter. I know, fuck my life. The other day I observed a conversation wherein a faithful Mormon was loudly proclaiming numerous health-restoring miracles that his priesthood power and his faith in the gospel had manifested in his life. A somewhat skeptical Twitterer asked him politely to expound on these modern-day miracles. He instantly shot back that he does not cast his pearls before swine. And that just kind of struck me. So we'll come back to that. So where were we? Oh, yes, killing children. Ask your doctor when child murder might be right for you. And if you don't have insurance, you can ask your priest or your bishop or even your rabbi about it. Now, how is that even a thing, Uncle Mark? You maybe or maybe not are asking. Well, nibblings, that is because buried in the big book of genocide, slavery, and more than a few instances of infanticide, there is a brief and terrible story that is, and I cannot stress this enough, even if I screamed it, inexplicably one of the central pillars of Judeo-Christian, quote, morality, and that is the story of Abraham and Isaac.
Correct.
Yay!
So Abraham was this guy who, although no proof that he even existed outside of the Bible exists, is super important to your Jews, your Muslims, and every single flavor of Christianity.
Yeah.
And as Doug will prove later, very problematically to Mormons. So he was getting really old and wanted a son, with his actual wife, Sarah, apparently not being satisfied with the son Ishmael he had conceived with his slave Hagar. Quick note, he, Abraham, the good guy in this story, throws Ishmael and Hagar out, abandoning them to die in the desert. This will dovetail nicely with the overall theme of my segment today. So why waste time? It's a short story. Let me just read it to y'all from the new international version of the Bible. Sorry, Doug. Because it fleshes out the narrative a bit more than the KJV. Sorry, not the KGB. Their version of the story is entirely different. The KJV, saving my lazy ass some oxygen. Here it is in Genesis 22, 1 through 19. Sometime later, God tested Abraham. He said to him, Abraham, here I am, he replied. Then God said, it's just one word, Abraham. Then God said, take your son, your only son, whom you love, FYI, Isaac, and go to the region of Moriah. Sacrifice him there as a burnt offering on a mountain I will show you. Early the next morning, Abraham got up, loaded his donkey. He took with him 2 of his servants, that means slaves, and his son Isaac. When he had cut enough wood for the burnt offering, he set out for the place God had told him about. On the 3rd day, Abraham looked up and saw the place in the distance. He said to his servants, stay here with the donkey, while I and the boy go over there. Why is that important? We will worship, and then we will come back to you. Abraham took the wood for the burnt offering and placed it on his son Isaac, and he himself carried the fire and the knife. That's equitable. As the 2 of them went together, Isaac spoke up and said to his father Abraham, Father, yes, my son, Abraham replied. The fire and wood are here, Isaac said, but where is the lamb for the burnt offering? Abraham answered, God himself will provide the lamb for the burnt offering, my son. And the 2 of them went on together. When they reached the place God had told him about, Abraham built an altar there and arranged the wood on it. He bound his son Isaac and laid him on the altar on top of the wood. Then he reached out his hand.
Can I just, sorry, there seems to be just one little, and then he bound his son. There was no come here, you!
No, none at all. So then he reached out his hand.
Well, it does seem like, it seems like Isaac might have been a bit of a credulous kid.
Yeah.
Just, hey, what are you doing now, Dad? You're tying me up? Okay.
Oh, should I lay on the wood?
You want me to lay down on this thing?
Hey, Dad, it's getting real hot.
What's the knife for?
So then he reached out his hand and took the knife to slay his son. But the angel of the Lord called out to him from heaven, Abraham, Abraham, here I am, he replied. The dialogue is super weird. Do not lay a hand on the boy, he said. Do not do anything to him. Now I know that you fear God because you have not withheld from me your son, your only son. No, he has another son named Ishmael, but whatever. Abraham looked up, and there in a thicket he saw a ram caught by its horns. He went over and took the ram and sacrificed it as a burnt offering instead of his son. So Abraham called the place, the Lord will provide. And to this day it is said, on the mountain of the Lord it will be provided.
I love the fact that a really important part of this story is you got to kill something.
Yeah, exactly.
You already built the altar.
So the angel, it's like, maybe that's what being left at the altar comes from, right? You can't leave me at the altar. So the angel of the Lord.
I also like the idea that they found literally the dumbest sheep that has ever existed.
How did it get tangled?
There's a sheep just tangled in a bush.
Yeah. Let's kill that. So the angel of the Lord called to Abraham from heaven a second time and said, I swear by myself, declares the Lord, that because you have done this. And is that the first time God swears to himself? On a Bible? I swear to me. Declares the Lord, that because you have done this and you have not withheld your son, your only son, I will surely bless you and make your descendants as numerous as the stars in the sky and as the sand of the seashores. Your descendants will take possession of the cities of their enemies, and through your offspring all nations on earth will be blessed because you have obeyed me. Then Abraham returned to his servants, and they set off together for Beersheba, and Abraham stayed in Beersheba. Okay, superstition aside.
When is this all of the nations will be blessed part going to happen? When does that happen?
Any day now.
Soon. So here's what happens in this fucking story. A man who has recently evicted his lover and young son into the desert with 1 bottle of water to die of thirst and exposure hears a voice that is not his tell him to slice the throat of and burn the warm body of his 37-year-old son. He asks no questions, makes no plea, just gets the fuck up the next day, tells Isaac and a couple of slaves to get the donkey, they're going on a hike. He chops the amount of wood he reckons it will take to reduce his beloved son's body to ash, and off they go. When they get to the mountain, he tells the slaves to stay with the donkey, and they'll be right back. He expresses more concern for the well-being of the donkey in the story than for his own son. Then he essentially lies to Isaac, makes him carry the wood for his own fucking funeral pyre up the mountain himself, lies to him again when he asks where the lamb is, then ties his own child up and prepares without hesitation to cut his throat and let him bleed out, all kosher-like. I wonder if the bottle of water Abraham sent Hagar and Ishmael off to die with was actually his slightly chipped world's greatest dad mug. Anyway, then in the nick of time, the voice tells him to stop, so he does. They see a ram in the weeds and kill him instead. Huzzah! Much morals, so hero. Let's make this story the cornerstone of our morality forever and ever, you guys.
Yeah.
Let us teach this story to our children to let them know that if a voice tells us to, we'll cut their fucking throats and burn their bodies on a mountainside. I mean, what the actual fuck with this bullshit? A man... Go ahead.
Can I just say, I love the idea that the actual only possible good moral that could come from this is, but he didn't kill him.
Yeah.
Right.
Like, that's as good as it gets, and it's still shitty.
And he gets credit for it, like, the most credit. Who gets more credit than Abraham for anything? So anyway, a man that abandoned a woman and a child to die already nearly kills his adult son after lying to him and making him carry the wood for his own cremation is the good guy in this story, and indeed one of the definitive good guys to billions of people worldwide.
Yeah.
Now,
Go
ahead.
I was saying, he might be the most revered man in the world,
Other than maybe Jesus or Muhammad.
Well, but
right?
I mean, but Muhammad, Islam, Judaism, and Christianity all revere
Abraham.
Abraham more so than in a lot of cases they do Moses, because Abraham is the father of all three of these religions.
Yeah,
right.
It's insane. So now apologists have dressed this up more than a fucking Christmas tree with reasons and excuses that are simply not there. You see, they say, this was to shock the Israelites out of ever participating in child sacrifice again. That's bullshit. Abraham was down to clown with infanticide. Didn't even pause.
Yeah, totally.
Didn't even pause. Oh, no, you see, they say. This is crazy. This was a foreshadowing of the life and tribulations of Jesus.
Of course.
Yeah. Oh, shut up. It's not. The authors of Genesis and the authors of the Gospels lived 1,000 years apart. It's absurd. You see, they say, this is a test of faith. Isn't that wonderful? Yeah, that's wonderful. I mean, great job, Abraham, for passing this horrible test with flying colors. But
right.
You failed the tests of basic humanity and fatherhood, like, really badly. And
yeah, like any other moral teacher would be like, no, you failed.
Yes, the trolley problem, you fucked this completely up.
Right.
And my favorite apologetic, Abraham had to learn about temptation and how to avoid it. What? A temptation is offering somebody something they really, really want in order to corrupt them. So this obviously means that for 37 years, Abraham really wanted to kill the shit out of Isaac. And he just needed a random voice to loose his dagger. Temptation. Fuck off with that. So every inch of this story is terrifyingly cruel. There is nothing redeeming or useful about it. Even the minor characters are slaves. But here we are with the majority of the people who surround us, all on a daily basis, thinking this is wonderful. We've explored around 50 biblical stories or parables here on The Heretic, mining for meaning and morality, and coming up with an empty bucket. Whether it's Job, the Good Shepherd, David and Bathsheba, the Ark of the Covenant, Elisha and the Bears, one single word of Leviticus, Philemon, Ezekiel, or Exodus, or Revelation, it's all horrible, and almost without exception, the moral of the narrative is the direct opposite of the moral we were taught they contain by people who were either lying to us or perpetuating older lies unaware. There are not an insignificant number of conversations in the Bible between slaves and people who own them. In Dan's story a couple weeks ago about David's terrible kids, Amnon and Absalom, one of them rapes his sister and the other one tells her to fuck off about it. That's it. That's the whole moral.
Yup.
And sure, there's the golden rule in the Sermon on the Mount, but for every one of those gems, there's 100 slayings of Canaanites and the latest crimes of King David. Everybody loves to talk about what a sweet dude Jesus was, but they may be forgetting Luke 19:27, where he said, "But those mine enemies, which would not that I should reign over them, bring them hither and slay them before me." Or how about his call to abandon everybody in Luke 14:26, which is a real charmer. "If any man come to me and hate not his father and mother and wife and children and brethren and sisters, yea, and his own life also, he cannot be my disciple." Or this Christ-like tidbit of love in Matthew 5:29. "If thy right eye offendeth thee, pluck it out, and cast it from thee. For it is profitable for thee that one of thy members should perish, and not that thy whole body should be cast into hell. And if thy right hand offend thee, cut it off, and cast it from thee. For it is profitable for thee that one of thy members should perish, and not that thy whole body should be cast into hell."
That kind of sucks, because if I cut off my right hand, I'm right-handed. I'm not going to throw it very well.
It's
when
not
I
good
throw it
advice,
away,
guys.
It's going to look like I throw bad with my left.
And then you're going to get an infection, and who wants that?
Yeah.
And here's history's most beloved peacenik in Matthew 10:34. "Think not that I am come to send peace on earth. I come not to send peace, but a sword." And then there's the time he killed the fig tree, or made the non-believer lady beg him, then convert before he'd exorcise her kid's demons, blah, blah, blah. He's a classic cult leader, kind of charismatic, but extremely self-absorbed. "Hey, this is all about me, over here. Okay." And a little about my dad, but mostly about me. So aside from murder and slavery and hatred of women and disgust with the sick and disabled and fear of birds and touching weasels, there's something that every page of the Bible has in common with every other one. And that is callousness. Every conversation, every interaction is stunningly cruel, cold, and abusive. People are bought and sold and fucked and discarded without thought or explanation. Children are abandoned or forgotten. There is less than 0% of the concept of consent. Life seems essentially meaningless and worthless in its pages because it's a reflection of the horrendous times it was written in and the awful people who wrote it. And that brings me back to the pearls before swine comment, taken from the oh so holy Sermon on the Mount, where Jesus is basically saying not to waste one's time with the unconvincible. Okay, fine. But in that online exchange I mentioned earlier, a man claiming direct contact with the power of the divine casually called a woman asking a polite question a swine. Yeah. I'm sure he went to bed that night feeling fine because it was, quote, from the Bible, but it's awful. What a horrible thing to call a person for just asking a question.
Right.
If you see some huge, screamy political or moral fight on social media, go to the most aggressive, hateful participant's bio and take a peek. After the American flags, you will almost universally find some combination of Christian, pastor, father, patriot, Jesus, faith, etc., right?
Yeah.
Could it be that the insane, verbally and emotionally violent and callous language and behavior we see every day in American Christians comes from the book that they model their entire lives off of? Are we seeing ghastly Bronze Age mores turbocharged by modern technology? The Bible is absolutely dripping with violence, cruelty, emotional malfunction, and hatred. Can we be surprised if the people who declare it the guiding force in their lives may often drip with violence, cruelty, and emotional dysfunction? The morals of the stories are all bad and damaging, but so is everything in between. It's 1,000 pages of inverted moral fables supported by endless passages of a completely dismal, unenlightened worldview based on the valuelessness of human life. So how can we expect people to think who think that it's God's inspired word to behave in a more enlightened, pluralistic, and less callous way? So that's what kind of struck me, is just how callous Christians behave towards other people, just generally. Yeah. So I think Abraham and Isaac is an excellent vehicle for that conversation.
Well, and I think you're absolutely right, particularly in this case, because it's a foundational myth.
Yeah.
And anything that is any hesitation or regret in the mind of Abraham or fear or psychological damage in the mind of Isaac ain't in the text.
It doesn't even rate mentioning.
No.
Right?
Right.
And so the apologists try to say, well, Abraham prayed and he pled about... No, it doesn't say that anywhere.
He didn't hesitate.
He didn't fucking hesitate. And that's why he's a righteous man.
Well, that's the thing, is that the Bible, in order to extract the good, holy messages from it, requires revision.
Yeah.
Like, you have to add to and or subtract from and or, expurgate in order to get anything good out of it.
Yeah, you have to
or you
invent
have
the
to
moral.
you have to be some PhD in Hebrew language to be able to say, actually, this word meant that word. It's like, all I've got is what's written in front of me.
Right.
Right.
I don't have time to study ancient Hebrew and read all the other texts that have something to... This is all I got.
Your standard
This is
issue
what it
American
says.
Christian is not going to go get a degree in the classics. Right.
Also, the guys that have the degree in the classics, the guys that can read all of the Greek, the Aramaic, the Hebrew, those guys have gone through it. And guess what? Their explanations are 0% more satisfying than just reading it.
Yep.
It's just confusion, and, when you actually, slog through all of the different, this is a misinterpretation of this word, and this word actually probably meant this and that and the other. Okay, it's still a shitty story.
Yeah, and it just pushes it closer to total narrative meaninglessness.
Right.
Right? If you need, if the inerrant word of God needs the support of 35 PhDs and thousands of pages of explanatory materials,
then it's flawed.
it might be flawed.
Yeah.
It might be erred.
Did either of you guys ever read the book by Chris Matheson, The Story of God?
I listened to it on audio.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. If anyone hasn't done it, it's well worth your time. He basically just takes the character of God as he is introduced and does or says things throughout the Bible, and gives those sets of pronouncements and actions a character.
Yeah.
And it's not a good one, obviously. And so he takes this story of Isaac and Abraham and Isaac, and he's not the first one to do this, but he does it quite well, that God didn't think Abraham would do it. And he was so shocked and disgusted that he would, because in the story, an angel comes and stops him, not God.
Yeah.
And then God is out of the narrative for a while. And so Chris Matheson makes this kind of great story about how God was alarmed and unnerved by what he had created that would do such terrible things without a moment's hesitation.
And the God in his story is an utter asshole.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, look, God needs to learn that he shouldn't get drunk and dare people to do shit if he doesn't want to see it actually
poor
happen.
Job and all his dead family.
Right.
Yeah,
So-
and everybody who lived at the time of the ark.
Yeah. So it's mean. The Bible's mean and it's useless. And so,
But at least it's badly written.
yeah. And as we discussed with Dan a week or two ago, but it's literature. It's such no, it's garbage that way too. So enough.
All right. Thanks.
I'm again it.
I'm again.
For that.
Bye, Isaac. Poor fucker.
Don't kill your kids.
Please.
Moving on.
Kill your kids. Uncle Mark,
Here I am. That's what Abraham said.
here am I.
You're so Abrahamic. Is
Thank
what
you.
are.
I'm Abrahami. Abrahamish.
There are times when I don't know what's going on.
That's called all the times.
I don't even know what's about to happen
Yes.
on a show that I am a part of.
Spontaneity is the spice of podcasting.
Yes,
Actually, no, it's not. But anyway, let's see what Uncle Dan has in store for us.
Yeah, this one's a mystery.
Yes, I specifically haven't told you guys what I'm actually doing this on because there's a little. It's not a quiz at the beginning, but I'm going to be a little mysterious at the beginning.
All right, good.
The other day, I was driving around in a Salt Lake City cemetery, and I came upon a headstone that it intrigued me. Big black granite with white writing, and like so many headstones in our fair city, it mentioned a religion. So let's see if this sounds familiar. Because this religion was founded in the mid-1800s. It sprang up out of the dominant religion, but its doctrine and practices diverged quite a bit. It began with a young man who didn't like how the sects around him practiced. So there were a lot of crazy offshoots happening. Like, for instance, a nearby group was claiming that the Redeemer was coming soon, etc. So our guy prayed for wisdom, and God told him that he would start the new true religion. He soon had a follower who became convinced that he was indeed a great prophet of God, and this follower was amazed at his wisdom and shocked at how quickly he produced documents of the Word of God. And before you knew it, these revelations had attracted thousands of followers. But his success and his radical new take on religion and some fairly radical ideas within his word rankled the local government, and he eventually found himself arrested and then killed. Jeez. Now, after his death, there was a hubbub over who his successor would be. Schism occurred. One man eventually emerged as the clear dominant winner of that battle, and he took his multiple wives and started a sect that became one of the fastest growing religions in the world throughout the 19th and 20th centuries. As a matter of fact, this faith is the only religion to have grown faster in every United Nations region over the past 100 years than the general population.
What?
So, by now, it should be clear what religion I'm talking about, right? I'll give you a hint.
Okay.
That founder that I was talking about, his name is Bob. Oh, sorry. The founder's name is The Bab, spelled B-A-B, which is Arabic for the gate. And the successor's name is Baha'u'llah, which is Arabic for the keymaster. Just kidding. The religion that was founded in Persia is a radical offshoot of Islam and is called Baha'i.
Oh.
See, I was so stuck on the local headstone. I'm like, okay,
so was I.
Yeah, this is a Mormon offshoot of some kind, right?
Yeah.
But then I found out it wasn't.
I tricked you.
You did trick me.
What's funny is that that headstone is just a standalone headstone, and it's not for a person. It's in the Mount Olivet Cemetery, and it just says Baha'i. It's just, look, we exist. We're the Baha'i.
Is that hello and goodbye at the same time?
It is. Yes.
It's like aloha.
Exactly.
It's the aloha of shaloms.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Traditionally, you would say Baha'i, how you doing? But so that was obviously a broad strokes look at the history. So let me just fill in a few of the gaps. The Bab, B-A with an accent B, or however you write it in Arabic, was born in Persia in 1819. He began his charismatic leader journey in his early 20s and was executed at age 30. But for such a short life, he had a pretty big impact, and he was prolific. Now, according to him, he claimed to have written over 500,000 verses of text.
Wow.
For context, the Quran is under 7,000.
Wow.
Unfortunately,
you know what? I want to belong to a religion with more rules than fucking Islam.
I didn't say
like
rules.
A lot.
I said text.
Okay.
So, and there's some importance there. Unfortunately for the Babists, most of his writings seem to have been lost. His writings started as interpretations of the Quran and Hadith, but as he progressed, he moved more toward expounding on the metaphysical and the philosophical. There is some dispute about what the Bab said. Just like with Joseph Smith and the various offshoots after he died, the Baha'i aren't the only people to claim lineage from the Bab. There are Babists who went in another direction, but they don't have the numbers that the Baha'i have, so they lose at history. Boo. Sorry.
Are they Bahalo?
Yes. Yes.
Thank you. Is this on? Hello?
They're the boy howdy.
Anyway, the Baha'i story is that the Bab said that every now and then an important person came along to give the world the spiritual teachings that it needs for that time. Jesus, the Buddha, Krishna, Muhammad, Abraham, these were all prophets of God who gave necessary messages for their time. He taught that a new guy was coming. Get ready. Then he taught that he was that guy, but the Baha'is just ignore that part and move on to Baha'u'llah.
Oh.
So, Baha'u'llah...
Thank God. I thought you were going to talk about Abraham again, and I've had just about enough of that guy.
Oh, no. Believe me, you joke, but you're the one that's going to torture us with that. So let everybody do gird your loins.
Yeah, dig in.
For the last little bit. And technically, the only tie-in I've got is that this is, if we're going to be technical, an Abrahamic religion of sorts.
Sure.
Anyway.
Yeah, if it's a Muslim offshoot, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So Baha'u'llah was a contemporary and follower of the Bab. He was actually a couple years older than the Bab was. Even though there were over 20 dudes that proclaimed themselves to be the prophet or divine physician that the Bab had prophesied about, 13-ish years after the Bab died, Baha'u'llah grabbed that brass ring and he kept it. And that's how the Baha'i faith was born. So, what do the Baha'is believe? Well, considering the soil that they sprung out of, they have some pretty decent founding ideas. Pretty woke for considering. We'll get to it, but considering, there's some pretty interesting stuff there. They start with the three unities, or far more clunkily, but they like it anyway, the three onenesses. So there's the oneness of God. That's
but
pretty
there's
easy.
three of them. That's kind of like the Never-Ending Story Part 2.
Right. Right.
It's a bit of a joke, but go on.
Well, there's the three onenesses, and then the four twonesses, and the five penises. So the first oneness is the oneness of God.
Goodbye, Baha'i listeners.
Yes, exactly. Well,
all one of you.
Yeah, exactly. So the oneness of God is pretty simple. There's one God. So there you go. He, she, it doesn't care what you call it. Allah, Jehovah, Great Spirit, Roger, whatever. Everybody that worships that same God, whether they know it or not. Then there's the oneness of religion. So despite everything you've heard and all the fighting that's happened throughout human history and all of the crap that has gone on, there's really just one religion. And it's just that religion is revealed in bits and pieces through progressive revelation. So what if that means that countless millions have died arguing over idiotic minutia? So what if that means that crucial knowledge was withheld from billions of people for millennia? They got the info that was useful at the time.
Great.
Eventually, it will all come together, and we'll get it. You'll see.
Well, that's why you have baptisms for the dead.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. A very popular Baha'i practice. And the final oneness is oneness of humanity. Now, this concept is actually where they take off in a pretty cool direction. When you hear Baha'i people talk, basically, here's how it works. They're pretty all in on the idea of equality when it comes to things like race, gender, etc. They talk about income equality, and they talk about social justice. And considering that this was coming out of the Middle East in the 1800s, I think that's pretty fucking amazing.
Yeah.
There are some other pretty neat notions in the Baha'i faith. They value science, for example. because they're not tremendously dogmatic. This isn't a big problem for them, as it is for other monotheistic religions. Baha'u'llah talked about the religion and science being two wings of a bird, and only with both, he said, could humanity truly soar. So that's nice,
Yeah,
I guess.
like that.
At least there's room for new information to come in without them having to contort themselves into pretzels trying to solve, square the circles. He said, for example, religion without science is superstition. Science without religion is materialism. So, at very least, I agree with the first half of that.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what his problem with materialism is, other than, whatever. I mentioned earlier that the Baha'is believe that the prophets are, quote, divine physicians. Their job is to perceive the disease and prescribe the remedy for the time. Baha'u'llah said, "Be anxiously concerned with the needs of the age you live in, and center your deliberations on its exigencies and requirements." Okay.
All right.
That's fine with me. Like, I have no problem with that notion. Figure out what is needed now and work on it.
Sure.
Sounds great.
Yeah.
So there you go. They have no clergy. Everybody is pretty much on their own to interpret the texts. And I learned that, actually, when I visited their temple in Delhi, in India. There's a really cool, if you Google the Lotus Temple.
Yeah, some of their architecture is really awesome.
They have some really neat stuff.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, there's there's a couple of things. There's a shrine to the Bab, which they claim is where they've interred his. They stole his remains and brought it to. I think it's in Haifa, or it's somewhere in what's now Israel.
Oh, really?
And it's a beautiful shrine.
Huh.
But yeah, I went to the Lotus Temple, which is gorgeous on the outside, a little bit humdrum on the inside, to be perfectly honest, but still a really cool place. Now, there are some caveats to how neat the Baha'i people are. While they are incredibly, racially welcoming, and they talk a really good game about being super pro equality for women. The main organizational body, which is known as the Universal House of Justice, excludes women. So
that's the one. That's where. Who is it? You got Superman. You got
Superman.
Aquaman,
You got Batman.
the Wonder Twins.
But Wonder Woman is actually technically not allowed.
Right. Gotcha.
So yes, they will talk a lot about equality for women, and they do work hard in that direction. But there is that glaring oversight there. There are also sex restrictions, which pisses me off. When you've got a group that's so forward-thinking, to have a prohibition of sex before marriage is frustrating. And it gets even more frustrating because marriage is only between a man and a woman.
Classic.
Which means
classic.
No gays.
Yeah.
So they can talk all day about equality till they're blue in the face, and about openness and about one humanity and blah blah blah. But if you like to boink somebody who looks like you're fucker hole.
Yeah, it doesn't matter how progressive a religion claims to be. At some point, religion just clogs the pump, right?
Yep.
It's so true.
The river of progress is dammed up by some stupid old idea.
Yeah. I mean, and they came up out of Islam. So this is, again,
it's
I give
kind of a
them
miracle
props.
that they're this progressive if it's from Islam, but still.
It is a bummer, though, that you get so close on some things, and you miss so big on some others. It's just like, God damn it.
Well, and when you talk a good line about being really super into science, and when you have that there, you have to be willing to take what the science is telling you. And guess what? The science tells you about sexuality and about trans issues and all that stuff.
Yeah,
the science is clear, and if you're going to pretend like you guys are super into science, you gotta go with it. Also, they don't drink. I don't really care that much about that, but that's a thing. So, very forward-thinking for 19th century Muslims, but only kind of okay by any kind of Abrahamic religion standards now.
But see, isn't that exactly the problem? Is you could be progressive for your time, religiously speaking, but you will inevitably not be progressive in 50 or 100 or 200 years. And because you're a religion, you're always going to be stuck in first gear. You're never going to be able to just, you know what? We were wrong about this. Let's make a change. Oh, we're wrong about that. Let's fix it. No.
Mm-hmm. Well, and the problem is that, you've got these writings of men claiming to be mouthpiece of God. And when you have anyone who says, I'm the mouthpiece of God, and then they write something down, it's fucking set.
Yeah.
So then you're just stuck with this writing. And unless this mouthpiece of God has the foresight to say, all of this is subject to change, society will advance and we'll learn things, and then you've got to change my words when you get to that. And here's a mechanism for doing that, in a way that doesn't hurt people. Yeah, you like you say, you're stuck in first gear for the rest of eternity.
Yeah, yep. One of the few, at least progressive, I know it's progressive, but interesting things embedded in Islam is at the beginning of the Quran where it says that which is not expressly forbidden is permitted.
Right.
And it's it's a way of saying, well, if it's not in here, then it's just do what you want to do, right? But you're right. Prophecy just freezes. When you say something's prophetic and from God, it just freezes a certain more in time at that moment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then you're done.
Yeah, and you're done. And, we've watched the Mormons scramble like crazy with things like whatever Brigham Young ever said.
Now, we're about to watch them scramble some more for this very reason.
Yeah. Prophecy. I'm again it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there you go. Just thought I'd introduce us all to the nicer Muslims.
Yeah.
That still don't quite have it all figured out.
Here's our unified field theory of the quote unquote good religions, and it can be summed up as this: could be worse, right?
Right.
Could definitely be worse.
Yeah.
So yay for the buy.
It's funny. One of the things that I watched in researching this was a video created by Rainn Wilson, who people know as Dwight Schrute from The Office, who is apparently a Baha'i. So there you go.
Yeah, he was raised Baha'i, and he loves it very much. He's like, it's really a huge force in his life. And I seem to recall that they've been persecuted rather terribly in some other Muslim countries, haven't they?
Oh, yeah. Well, you say anything about, maybe Muhammad didn't have all of the answers. Yeah, you're not gonna be treated well.
You're gonna get some lashes. Expect lashes.
Yeah,
right? You're gonna get some genocide.
You're gonna get heads are gonna roll. So all right, cool. Right. Well, Baha'i guys,
but see you later. Gentlemen,
hello.
Here am I.
We are privileged to put our stupid ramblings out into the world for free for the world to hear, and possibly beyond. You never know. Our missives may make it to Kolob. You don't know.
Throughout the known universe.
That's right.
But not everybody hears it for free because some people are so enamored of us, and I don't blame them. That they give us their money.
That's right.
They decide to chime in and be a part of the creation of this thing, and golly, we appreciate it. So, some thanks to go out. Thanks first to Brendan, who is amazing, and then Uncle Doug.
Oh.
I'm going to need you to improvise on the spot the patron saint of Susie.
Susie, all right. Susie, your patron saint, and it's a good one, is Saint Sequoia of La Jolla.
Damn it, I wanted that one.
No, that's Susie's.
God damn it, Susie.
She is the patron saint of ultimate Frisbee-related mass casualty events.
Oh, yeah.
Aquaphobic water buffalo, and people who do call it a comeback.
You went from
Excellent.
large to small.
Excellent. I like it.
Very good. Congratulations, Susie. That's
And I have to improvise a saint
my
for
goodness.
Tamara. So, Tamara, your saint, which is better than Doug's qualitatively across the board. Sorry, Susie.
or maybe quantitatively.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's more saint.
Yeah, exactly. Is Saint Ignatius of Joburg. That's Johannesburg, South Africa.
Yeah.
This is the patron saint. He is the patron saint of extremely large ocean voyage ships.
Ocean voyage ships.
You know, boats is what I'm getting at.
Sure.
He is the patron saint of people whose neighbors like Trump. And the and he will bless all the people. He is the patron saint of coniferous trees.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Safe. It's a safe saint.
there you go. You're in good hands. And now, Uncle Mark, I
Yes.
do believe that you have to beheaven someone. We have Big Easy Blasphemy, who has who's already a donor, but has decided to up the ante and secure their place in
Forever.
eternity.
I have to Bahia saint or
Yeah.
beheaven, whatever. I don't know what I'm
beheaven.
fucking doing. So, well, let me give it a crack. What say you? So, our dearly not yet departed Big Easy Blasphemy. In a day far distant, when you leave this world in a ball of fire, after trying to jump the Grand Canyon in a 1996 Ford Taurus because a raging Gary Busey is hot on your heels on his motorbike, after you took everything he had in a high-stakes Keno game, you will at long last be at rest. For a minute. When the light of your soul flickers back on, you begin to hear a familiar sort of cacophony, to smell some strangely familiar smells. How odd, post-exploded you thinks. Well, odd but damned familiar, because you finally snap all the way alive on the corner of Royal and Ursuline in beautiful New Orleans, Louisiana. And it is the thick of Mardi Gras season.
Woo!
Well, not exactly Mardi Gras season, Big Easy Blasphemy. Your almost pathological fandom of and generous support for the show and your adoration of one uncle in particular has landed you in the most laissez le bon temps rouler heaven imaginable, Mardi Gras. Oui, Big E. Welcome to the never-ending pre-Lentian celebration of all things Uncle Mark. So why not take in the Invisible Childhood Parade, featuring floats like a butt-toothed middle child curled up on a piss-soaked mattress, hoping none of the crazy people he lived with would notice his existence. That's fun. Okay, how about a parade featuring Mark and his deeply religious Mormon family, looting any number of hotel rooms, taking everything that isn't securely screwed down, with another float showing us getting kicked out of Hickory Farms, which, trust me when I say fucking remembers, for double-fisting all the free samples as fast as we could. That's a real family favorite. Or how about a parade celebrating Mark's single-season youth basketball career, with a float showing him curled up like a potato bug around the basketball he is very surprised to have found himself in possession of, and another one showing the basketball bouncing off his canary-encircled head. Ha ha! Why not take in a parade featuring the glories of Mark's high school dances, an endless cavalcade of girls' choice events, with a very nervous young closet case panicking over how to maintain a veneer of heterosexuality, but having no idea what that even entails, lest he get murdered by his family. Lots of great 80s music in this parade. Hey, Big Easy Blasphemy, why not head across town to see a parade of Mark's movie career? Sure, he's done some good ones, but this parade is the bad ones only. Oh my, look at those stinkers go. These are turkeys you can't even find on the dark web version of YouTube, but you can find them right here. And what now? Lordy, it's actually Mardi Gras, which, as we all know, means Fat Mark, which is, yeah. And, of course, the pride of place in the parade on the day itself is Mark's throat, which you can hear being cleared every Wednesday on the How To Heretic, Monday for patrons like Big Easy Blasphemy, and what a phlegmy bastard it is. Look at it glisten. And guess what, Big Easy Blasphemy? Fat Tuesday is every Tuesday here in Mardi Gras. Because what, and will be forever and ever, because what says Mardi Gras more than a white middle-aged gay guy from Utah? This is your own personal heaven from which there is no escape and no respite, Big Easy Blasphemy. Laissez les bons marquis rouler. The end.
Wow.
Yeah.
An oddly both self-serving and self-deprecating heaven from Uncle Mark.
That one went pretty hellish pretty quickly.
Dreams really do come true. And it's forever.
You said it was going to be Mardi Gras, and then you said that he had a favorite uncle, and I started to pull up my shirt to show my boobs, but then it turned out to be...
Well, next time we can do Danny Gras.
Okay.
Yeah. We'll do Danival.
It's and I just show my boobs anyway, no matter what.
Totally.
I encourage that behavior in all people.
So congrats,
frankly.
Big Easy Blasphemy.
Yeah, and thank you so much to all of our patrons. You guys are amazing. You're better than the rest of the listeners, so well done you.
But don't tell them we said that.
For God's sake, don't spread that around. And also go to the places and give us the stars. All of the stars. We appreciate you.
All the everything.
Let's move on.
Love it. Uncle Dan.
Hey.
Do you feel like so far in this show you've had enough Abraham?
I feel like you couldn't give me enough Abraham.
I don't know if there's enough Abraham for us to have.
Look, it's Abraham all the time. Youbraham, Ibraham,
we all scream for Abraham.
For Abraham.
Here on Abraham Talk.
Yeah, today is a very Abraham-heavy show, and Doug is going to make it a whole lot heavier, I think.
But, Doug, don't do the Abraham that everybody knows and loves. Give us something new. Give us something fresh.
Give us something spin different. On it.
How about
something local?
How about some fan fiction?
Yeah. That's the stuff, baby.
Well, dear uncles, the stated goal of this podcast is to help people who have recently left or are in the process of leaving religion to take their first steps into a larger, better world.
Oh, shit, I forgot about that.
And it is also to give us something to do in the Witness Protection Program.
That's true. Part of that process is shining a light on the strange, silly, and dangerous practices of your various and sundry belief systems that have and continue to shackle the minds of humans. To that end, it follows that an unstated goal of this podcast is to prove, to whatever degree possible, that said belief systems are false. And it follows further that another goal of our podcast is to prove our own local cult as false, if for no other reason than we know the most about it and know how much damage it continues to inflict. I, like many of you, have been binging strange shows that in a saner, safer world I probably would never have noticed. One of those shows that Uncle Mark turned me on to.
Thank you for talking about my career, Doug. Thank you.
I finally got around to...
Thank you.
I finished Netflix and I decided to watch the movies Uncle Mark made.
Oh, boy.
So... one of those shows that Uncle Mark turned me on to is the show Alone. The goal of this show is to survive the longest alone with only a handful of survival tools in some of the deepest, most rugged wildernesses in the world.
If you want to see some animals get skinned, it's the show for
That's
you.
what I was just about to say. You're right. If you can stomach the capturing and gutting of small forest creatures, and many, many of them, this show is an explanation of human psychology, an exploration of human psychology and the human spirit.
Yeah.
Each season basically comes down to which contestant can find the most fat content, and people who don't get awfully close to starvation.
Yeah, and madness.
Yeah.
So
if the goal of that show is to find and consume fat, and the goal of our show is to discredit Mormonism, then the Book of Abraham is the equivalent of of walking out of your lean-to one morning to find a supine, English-speaking, 2-ton elephant seal who has heard of your plight and would like to offer up its body to your cause. And by the way, if that's not enough, it's got friends named the Book of Moses, Joseph Smith History, and Joseph Smith Matthew that would gladly donate their bodies to the cause as well. These seals, incidentally, are all part of a pod that calls itself the Pearl of Great Price. Okay.
The most expensive pearl.
That's right. I think which is neither great nor expensive.
Right.
I think I have extended the metaphor as far as I can. So
I think we went past the furthest extension. Yeah.
I've been kicking around doing the Book of Abraham since our early days, and since I have managed to avoid anything Mormon now on the podcast for 10 consecutive episodes.
Really?
Amazing.
Yeah,
You did?
really. 10. I've gone 10 episodes. A new record. I thought I would take a dive off the 10-meter board into the shallow end of the dirt pool and discussed one of the most egregious...
Off the 10-meter board into the baptismal font.
The shallow end of the baptismal font.
Yeah.
And discuss one of the most egregious and laughably preposterous aspects of the Mormon Church.
It's wonderful.
Now, before we proceed,
wonderful.
I have tried to structure this segment such that if you have any wavering Mormon friends or family, you can play them this segment and hopefully it can do some good. We're obviously not going to pull our punches to make this more palatable, but if what the Book of Abraham says is true and what I'm saying is false, then they should not be fearful or wary. Right. The Book of Abraham is one of several disparate works that make up a strange and not oft talked about part of Mormon canon. Mormons believe in the Bible, specifically the King James Version, which tells the exploits of the prophets of God in the Middle East, from creation through Jesus and his apostles. Mormons further believe in the Book of Mormon, which purports to be an abridged history of the inhabitants of the New World, who also had prophets of God and arrived in the Americas in the 600s BCE. It tells the exploits of these prophets, leading up to a visit by the resurrected Christ himself, and then after a further 400 years, the darker-skinned evil natives killed off the light-skinned righteous natives, except for one gold trumpet enthusiast, Moroni. Moroni and his father, Mormon, had abridged the complete history of both of these continents onto plates of gold in a special language called Reformed Egyptian. This will matter a lot in a few minutes. And carried them to an appointed place and buried them. This place would turn out to be, 1,400 years later, upstate New York, where Joseph Smith found them, and by the power of God, and with the help of special eyeglasses and or a stone and a hat, translated them from the hieroglyphics into 17th century ye olde-timey English for some reason. Mm-hmm. Longtime listeners will know that part of the story by heart by now. Most will remember that Mormons believe in another book called the Doctrine and Covenants, or the D&C, which is equivalent to the Mormon Hadith, as it is a series of 136 revelations given to Joseph Smith between 1823 and 1844. Brigham Young and Joseph F. Smith, incidentally, received a total of one revelation each, making up sections 136 and 138. There have been no official revelations since. There have been two manifestos.
Is that right?
Yeah.
So the polygamy was not doing away with polygamy was not a revelation?
No, but doing away with polygamy and letting blacks into the priesthood were manifestos. And what's the difference, one might ask?
Sounds very Unabomber-y.
Yeah, and the only difference is all of this shit's made up, but a manifesto is less than a revelation. So, suck on that, women and people of color.
Right.
Less than a revelation, but more than an abstract.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
Somewhere on the continuum.
Yeah. Great.
The vast majority of these revelations are about financial matters, but others touch on many doctrines of the current Mormon Church and its offshoots, including how the church should be organized, baptism, the priesthood, and most famously and embarrassingly for the church, Section 132, which spells out the absolute necessity of polygamy.
Right.
There are several other revelations of God telling Emma Smith to shut up about said polygamy and get with the program.
Yeah.
Lastly, and almost certainly unbeknownst to most or many nevermos out there is a fourth book in the Mormon canon that it seems pretty clear the powers that be would probably prefer you didn't know about, because it is by far the strangest and most problematic minefield in Mormondom, the Pearl of Great Price.
Boy, the competition's fierce, though.
It truly is.
I mean, it's a photo finish, Doug. It is a four-way tie for... It's a three-way tie for second, right?
The Pearl of Great Price derives its name from the parable of the pearl in Matthew 13. The introductory note of the book itself states, quote, "The Pearl of Great Price is a selection of choice materials touching many significant aspects of the faith and doctrine of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints," end quote. It's basically a repository for a bunch of random stuff that Joseph Smith produced that the church couldn't figure out a place for, but because he was a prophet, they couldn't throw them away either, so they jammed them together into this small, strange book. The Book of Mormon, the Doctrine and Covenants, and the Pearl of Great Price are almost always published together for Mormons, and this is referred to as the triple combination. Sometimes the Bible is published with the triple in a single book, and this is referred to as the quad.
Which Uncle Dan rightly described as a bowling bag
That's right,
that
exactly.
Mormons carry to church every week.
And it's as a young man, and I can't speak to whether this happened for young women or not. And I'd sure like to know, but I only know it as a young man. It was a big deal when you were kind of given your quad. I think when you became a deacon or your triple combo, and you had your name monogrammed on it. You guys,
yeah, Deseret Book would stamp your name in little gold letters on it, right?
Yeah. Incidentally, the ubiquitous blue Book of Mormon you find in Marriott hotel rooms, and that is waggled at you by missionaries around the world, does not contain the DNC or the Pearl of Great Price, because milk before meat or some such bullshit.
Yeah.
Basically,
because they don't want you to know.
exactly. You've got to put some
Right.
skin in the game in the form of baptism or tithing before we're going to take you to Crazy Town.
That's right. Milk before meat means we've got to get you baptized before you find out anything else about this shit.
Exactly.
We've got to get you on the grid.
Exactly. The Pearl of Great Price consists of 5 books: the Book of Moses, the Book of Abraham, Joseph Smith Matthew, Joseph Smith History, and the Articles of Faith. Each of these present its own set of problems, but none so much as the Book of Abraham, as we'll discuss. So first, let's talk about the other books briefly. After Joseph Smith published the Book of Mormon and didn't get laughed off the planet or sued by several other authors for plagiarism, he was feeling lucky. So in 1830, he embarked on what would eventually be a quixotic quest to retranslate the Bible.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he maintained that through the many centuries, several key truths had been lost in translation or by the hand of Satan, and he would set it all right. At the time of his death in 1844, he had managed to translate, quote-unquote, 5 chapters of Genesis and 1 chapter of Matthew.
Joseph Smith is a great cautionary tale for people who believe your luck never runs out.
Yeah, you know what you should do is never tell your friends you're going to write a screenplay.
Right? Well, and also, like, you know, if you don't actually speak any of the languages that these were originally written in, maybe don't claim to be a translator.
Yeah, he did not speak Heek, Hebrew, or Aramaic.
It's all heek to me.
So that paltry effort makes up the books of Joseph Smith Moses and Joseph Smith Matthew. The Matthew translation offers very little that differs from the source material in the King James Version. The Book of Moses does offer some extra stuff. Joseph believed, as so many in his time, that the first 5 books of the Old Testament were actually written by Moses himself. So Joseph adds in a new chapter 1 before chapter 1 of Genesis, which is a cosmic vision giving to Moses, and wouldn't you know it, it contains a reference to Joseph Smith. The rest is just Joseph's interpretation of the first few chapters of Genesis.
I like how he's kind of like, you know how Alfred Hitchcock always used to put himself in his movies for just like a little walk-on cameo?
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
The rest is just Joseph's interpretation of Genesis with some healthy additions, and again, several references to himself and the bringing forth of the restored gospel. Joseph claimed that all this came to him through revelation, so at the end of the day, we have to take his word for it. He would have been well advised. Right, but what as we'll see, his word isn't worth all that. He would have been well advised to stick to the tactic of claiming it was just simply revelation. Lastly are the Joseph Smith History and the Articles of Faith. The former is the telling of the first vision and the translation of the golden plates by Joseph himself. It will probably not surprise you that the Joseph in Joseph's version is a man of singular righteousness and mighty constitution. It is, however, the official and accepted version of these events. Back in episode 134, we talked about the many competing versions of several of these events, some of them by Joseph's own description, but that's a story for another day. And then the Articles of Faith, or 13 Tenets of Faith that Uncle Dan touched on in episode 152. They are not worth our attention here because they barely merit the attention of most modern Mormons.
Yeah.
This all brings us to the Book of Abraham. Now, if what I have described so far seems grandiose and far-fetched, strap in. As Joseph's prominence grew and the ranks of the credulous swelled in his church, he clearly began to feel that there was literally nothing he could not concoct and no one who could prove his concoctions false. The time and place that Joseph was operating was obsessed with ancient Native American burial mounds that dotted the landscape, which Joseph sought to explain with the Book of Mormon. There was also a global obsession with all things Egypt. Mummies were being pulled from the ground all over Egypt, each with papyruses and pottery covered in exotic markings that no one could decipher. There were so many mummies being pulled from the graves that mummified cats were used as fuel in English foundries.
In a foundry?
Well, basically everything that died for a period of time in Egypt was mummified.
Yeah, but that's not
Right.
like warming your house. That is melting fucking ore.
I don't know the physics of it. They
Wow.
burn warm.
It's a lot of cats.
Yeah, exactly. It was in this time.
Well,
What's that?
I mean, you guys both have cats, so if worst comes to absolute worst, you got fuel.
Well, that's only if they die first.
Yeah, you got to mummify them.
If I die first, I know.
Dan's
what'll
always
happen to me.
looking on the bright side. Thank you for the
I am.
silver lining.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So it was in this time that 11 mummies were unearthed by a man named Antonio Lobolo between 1818 and 1822, along with tons of attending artifacts. Lobolo died in 1830, and the collection found its way to a man named Michael Chandler, who brought them to the east coast of the U.S. for display and hopefully sale. This display found its way to Kirtland, Ohio in 1835, the home of the exploding Mormon church. Joseph, upon seeing the display, was hooked. He immediately claimed that he could tell that some of the papyruses contained the writings of Abraham and Joseph themselves. Joseph Smith scraped together $59,000 in today's dollars to purchase 4 mummies and at least 5 papyruses, and immediately set to translate them.
When you say he scraped together enough money, you mean that he duped some of his followers to pay for something? 'Cause he wasn't gonna do it.
100%. He
Yeah.
got several of his
Built them.
followers to put together their money, and then he bought this stuff.
Yeah.
So, one might be tempted to marvel at the incredible coincidence that these specific papyruses found their way to Kirtland, Ohio, thousands of years after their writing, and just happened to fall into the hands of Joseph Smith, the only man on earth that could translate them. This is, of course, compounded by the fact that Moroni buried the gold plates a mere stone throw from where Joseph Smith's house would be in upstate New York 1,400 years after the fact. This is obviously silly to us and only makes the story of the golden plates and the Book of Abraham all the more ridiculous. However, I must say here that these particular coincidences are not the silver bullet against Mormonism we might think they are, and are among the easiest things for true-believing Mormons to simply dismiss.
Yeah. Because Jesus is magic. You guys.
Exactly. If you believe that Joseph Smith was a prophet of Almighty God, and if you believe his divinely directed mission was to restore the one true religion of God to the earth 1,700 years after it fell away, then it's not really much of a stretch to believe that God directed Moroni to bury the plates where he did, or that he guided the papyruses to Michael Chandler and then directed Chandler to Kirtland. In fact, the more circuitous and Byzantine the route these artifacts took to get to their final destination is actually faith-affirming to Mormons, who see it all as a heavenly version of national treasure. To us, who have either escaped the cult or who have never been under its spell, these coincidences are damning, mostly because they simply are. But to current Mormons...
Because they are facts.
Right. But to current Mormons, they are proof of the quiet, patient hand of God pulling the many levers of his plan. So I would actually counsel that if you have practicing Mormon friends or family, you don't even bother with these coincidences.
No.
I promise you are not the first to point them out, and their ability to deny them is a well-exercised muscle.
Yeah.
There are other coincidences, however, which we will talk about, that are far more useful, damning, and hard to deny. Such as the fact that at the same time that Joseph Smith, Hiram Smith, Oliver Cowdery, and Sidney Rigdon were composing the Book of Mormon, supposedly the comprehensive anthology of the whole history of all Native Americans, which has the entirety of every culture on both American continents beginning in 600 BCE with a dozen or so Jews.
Yeah.
Archaeology, anthropology, linguistics, and not too long after, the sciences of radiocarbon dating and genetics would all conspire to show these claims as utterly false. And most importantly for us today, the lost and mysterious Egyptian language that Joseph Smith found shade under in which to compose the Book of Abraham was being deciphered at that very time.
Yeah.
During the French occupation of Egypt in the late 18th century, they dug up and stole everything that was not nailed down. Among their plunder was a decree written on a black granodiorite stela. I got that one. Nailed it. In ancient Greek and ancient Egyptian hieroglyphics.
I love when Brando yelled that outside of Stella's apartment.
Granodiorite stela!
Yeah.
When the British defeated the French in 1801, they stole everything the French had stolen, including what was now called the Rosetta Stone. Scholars began the difficult process of deciphering the lost language in 1803, and by 1824, Jean-Francois Champollion had pretty much cracked the code. News of this apparently traveled slowly, and so when Joseph Smith took possession of the papyruses in 1835, he believed it to still be indecipherable, and therefore he thought he could claim they said whatever he wanted them to. Always the fabulist, His discovery could not be some modest artifact or exotic text. It had to be big, and so he went big. Joseph claimed the papyruses were written not just about Abraham, but by his own hand.
Yeah.
And described Abraham's journey in Egypt and Canaan. Somehow, even this translation came back as 17th century English. Go figure. Of the things Joseph knew about ancient Egyptian, which were nothing, he believed that individual Egyptian hieroglyphics had expansive meanings, which is why he claimed the Book of Mormon was written in them. One glyph could be an entire paragraph of text, supposedly,
Right.
which makes it ideal if your medium is chiseled gold.
Yeah.
This
Right.
will turn out not to be true at all. As Joseph wrote it, the book is only short 5 chapters and describes Abraham's escape from being sacrificed in Egypt and his covenant with God to be the father of many nations. By the way, his near sacrifice was meant to be an analog for Isaac's sacrifice. So in the opening chapter, Abraham was tied down on an altar and a priest came to kill him, and he was saved at the last second by an angel of God.
Wait, okay.
Yes.
We know that this guy was cribbing from the actual Bible all the time.
Right.
Like he was a plagiarist.
From anything.
Yes.
But he plagiarized the actual story of the guy and then fucked it up?
Well, he didn't fuck it up. What he's claiming is that the sacrifice of Isaac by Abraham was an echo or an analog to how he was almost sacrificed by a priest of we'll get to it, Kelchinor.
Okay.
But
So you're telling me what you're telling me is that this guy had it happen to him,
that's right.
and then when someone said, "Hey, do the thing that happened to you to your son," he was
Yes.
like, "Yeah, okay."
Yeah.
The
Okay,
traumatic thing that nearly cost you your life.
That is exactly right.
And it just is crazy. It's the cycle of abuse. What can I say?
Yeah, it doesn't.
Well, it's true.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
So chapters 3 and 4 go even bigger, with God himself telling Abraham about the star Kolob, which is nearest to his home, which governs all other celestial bodies and whose year is 1,000 years on earth. That's right.
There's a great song about it. Doug talked about it in another episode.
Yeah, we talked about the song in episode 18 and then Kolob as a concept in episode 132.
Yeah, it's wonderful.
Abraham is told that all beings, us included, you and me, are eternal and existed with God before creation and will exist for eternity. There is a plurality of gods, many gods, who did not so much create the earth but organized it out of existing materials and then did the same with Adam and Eve. The rest of the book is a recounting of the acts of creation with great pains taken to describe the many gods that participated. I can't tell you how many times it says, and the many gods went, and the gods meaning many gods. It's like, okay.
Yeah.
Adam and Eve
Yeah.
it's weird. Adam and Eve are created together and then again separately, with the gods pulling a rib from Adam to make Eve, just like in Genesis. It ends with Adam naming every creature brought forth before him. The translation was then forever interrupted by several bullets in Carthage, Illinois, resulting in Joseph's death in 1844, which we covered in episode 96. The book is grandiose, heretical, and has given way to many of the Mormon Church's beliefs that to this day lead many Christian denominations to claim that Mormons are not true Christians. Here's the thing, though. It is all bullshit. Not just in the sense that most religious texts are mythologies, allegories, or exaggerations, but in the fact that what this book is based on exists. And spoiler alert, it does not say what Joseph said it did.
Yeah.
Right.
Before we get into that, there is one more coincidence that Mormons really wish didn't happen. After the turmoil of the succession crisis in the wake of Joseph's assassination, the church split, with most of Joseph's family, and therefore the mummies and the papyruses, remaining in Nauvoo with Emma.
Right.
3 of the papyruses, it's a hard word to say, were copied down, and these copies did make it out west with the Brighamite Church, and we'll talk about those in a minute. After Emma's death, her new husband sold the collection, and it found its way to the Chicago Museum, where they were destroyed in a fire in 1863. Or were they?
Skun-dun-dun.
The mummies were lost to history, but several fragments of the papyruses were actually not burned. And by an incredible chain of possession too complicated to cover today, they found their way to the New York Metropolitan Museum of Art, and in 1966, an Egyptologist teaching at the University of Utah, Dr. Aziz Atiyah, saw them and realized what they were. Now, Uncle Mark, I think you might have something to say about Dr. Atiyah.
It's pretty crazy. I actually, because of a family connection, I actually became very close to Dr. Atiyah and his wife. And as a young man, and I mowed their lawn and shoveled their walk, and they made me dinner and taught me some basic Arabic. They were unbelievably lovely, wonderful people.
Yeah, lovely.
Yeah, crazy lovely. But then they were very exotic to me because they were Egyptians and super fascinating.
Yeah.
But anyway, if I'm correct, he brought the papyrus from the museum in New York to the church here in Salt Lake.
Yeah, well, he made the introduction, so to speak, and said, hey, Mormon church, you might have an interest in what I think are your papyruses.
Yeah, but what's funny is he knew full well that it did not say what they claimed it said.
100%.
Yeah.
In 1967, the LDS Church purchased them and, for obvious reasons, tried to bury them. But the cat was out of the bag, mostly because of Dr. Atiyah, so bona fide Egyptologists as well as Mormon apologists began analyzing them. Long story short, and this story could be exceptionally long, what Joseph claimed them to be was preposterously, laughably, indisputably not what they actually said. Now, we're too long in the tooth in this segment to really tear into what is wrong with these translations, or what is, all that is wrong with these translations. As I was kicking around this segment a few weeks ago, our fellow travelers John Dehlin and Radio Free Mormon, on his podcast, Mormon Stories, brought on one of the world's leading Egyptologists, Robert Rittner, to do a deep dive into how wrong all this is. And if you have a spare 12 hours and 57 minutes...
Jesus Christ!
I'm not kidding.
It's insane.
12 hours and 57 minutes.
Yeah.
I encourage you to listen to episodes 1339 through 1341 for just how crazily incorrect all this is.
Yeah. If you didn't think Egyptologists could get mad... and why would you think that? Because we've all seen Indiana Jones.
That's right.
But man, this guy gets het up over the shit scholarship and the lying.
Yeah, and the apologetics behind this. He's like this, and I just can't describe how wrong it is, because what Joseph says it says, well, we now know exactly what it says. And Joseph says, oh, this character is named such and such. We'll talk about this. And this Egyptologist is like, no, that's this guy. Like, I can read his name. So I will not be able to. Oh, and also, credit where it's due, Jeremy Runnels does a great deep dive in the CES letter on the Book of Abraham, which we talked about in episode 141.
Yeah.
I will not be able to do anything that holds a candle to that, but let's talk about some of the most glaring and damning examples of how wrong this is. The papyruses that Joseph obtained had huge pieces missing, which was not uncommon. Papyruses don't last forever, so they become brittle and pieces fall off, especially when they're being transported a lot. So Joseph just drew into the missing places what he wanted it to be. So these 3 facsimiles are printed to this day in the Pearl of Great Price. They are without a doubt the most uncomfortable parts of the quad. And true-believing Mormons would prefer if you don't look them up. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
So go ahead and look them up while we're doing this. We'll wait. Joseph claimed that the first one showed Abraham on an altar with the priest of Elkanah holding a knife over him, with the Spirit of God showing up just in the nick of time. Well, this is actually a standard funerary document called the Book of Breathing, written specifically for a priest named Hor or Horus. We know this because it says so on the fucking papyrus.
Right.
The original papyrus obtained by the church in the 1960s, the head of the priest of Elkanah is missing, as is the knife. And so, how do we patch that? With the myriad extant books of breathing found today. The priest is actually the jackal-headed god Anubis, and he's not even holding a knife.
No.
Although the body of the supposed priest is black, Joseph drew in a white head because, racism, rather than the black jackal head that matched the body.
Yeah, and he was black because he was a jackal covered in hair.
Yeah.
He's not black because he's an evil black person.
Right, exactly.
Which is what Joseph proposed.
Yeah. Oh, and the Egyptians didn't practice human sacrifice. So there's that. The figure lying supine on the altar is not Abraham, but the god Osiris, who just so happens to have a large erection that is penetrating a bird that is his wife Isis.
Yeah.
None of that. Joseph drew. This marks the first time Joseph passed up an opportunity to stick a dick in something. The name Elkanah is also not correct because there was not a god named Elkanah. Here is a partial list of names made up by Joseph that exists nowhere in all of Egyptian writing or history, only in the Book of Abraham. Ready? This is partial. Elkanah, Libnah, Mamekra, Korash, Shalmahim, Shagril, Olashem, Nittah, Jershon, Sechem, More, Kolob, Shinnah, Kikhab, Olieh, Kokuabiam, Sholem, Olamaiha, Chambong, Lojayuk, Lajoki, and Kungpongki.
Shambong?
How ridiculous is this list? Well, somewhere in there, I won't say where, I started reading from my local Chinese restaurant's menu.
Oh, okay. I know that Cocoa Beam is another star or planet, right?
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah. Which, the first time I read that, I had tears in my eyes. I was laughing so hard. Cocoa Beam.
Yeah.
So, most of those names are from Abraham, and they don't exist. They don't exist, The Egyptians wrote down a lot of stuff, and until recently we didn't know what it was, but now we fucking do.
And just in case you failed to mention it, Doug, the Book of Breathing that this artifact is one of the most common. It is the CVS receipt of Egypt.
Yeah.
It is so fucking common and mundane.
Everyone was buried with one because it was the set of instructions for how to start breathing once you woke in the land of the dead.
Yeah.
So basically, the ornateness of the document was certainly a factor of your wealth, but basically everybody was buried with one. So yeah. Now, a couple of those names I mentioned do have Hebrew roots. They're not Hebrew words, but they have Hebrew roots because Joseph apparently was trying to learn Hebrew at the time, but this does nothing to explain why mangled Hebrew words would show up in an Egyptian papyrus.
Right.
Okay, we'll step on the gas pedal a bit here. Joseph claims that facsimile 2 depicts God's creation and cosmology, including Kolob, which it does not. It is a traditional funerary amulet. Incidentally, one of the characters in this one, Joseph claims to be God sitting on his throne, when it's actually the god Min, also with a healthy erection. The church did not have this boner in its original copies. Pardon me, it did have this boner in its original copies, but erased it until they were first forced to restore it in the wake of the discovered papyruses.
Oh my God, I love it.
Joseph claims facsimile number 3 is a depiction of Abraham sitting on Pharaoh's throne discussing astronomy. It says nothing of the kind, and every character he identifies in facsimile 3 is as incorrect as everything else he claims. We could go on and on and on and on.
He's wrong in every fucking detail.
He's not just wrong everywhere. He's never right. Joseph could simply have claimed
he obviously made the thing up. So
he couldn't be right because he couldn't read the language.
Right, and
detailing what he got wrong is almost a futile exercise because all of it.
Well, and imagine how powerful it would have been had this kind of illiterate, farmer from upstate New York gotten anything right.
Yeah,
but he didn't. Yeah. So Joseph could have simply claimed that all this came to him in a dream or a vision, but for some reason he had an infatuation with the artifacts and the accoutrements of Revelation. So the Mormon Church is stuck with this massive embarrassment on its books. And they can't dump it because several of the doctrines that set them apart from any other Protestant faith are laid out here. The pre-existence, Kolob, eternal progression, the plurality of gods, etc.
Yeah.
To that end, metric tons of ink have been wasted by apologists to find something to hang their hats on, and that will certainly be the subject of an upcoming Square That Circle. There are too many to name here, but the main apologetic, and one of my favorites, is that Joseph was not literally translating the papyruses, which he adamantly claimed he was doing,
yes,
but was only inspired by them. Okay, then why all the smoke and mirrors? Why continue to include and defend them? Why did Joseph claim to use the Urim and Thummim and his apologists claim that he did for decades when it was always a rock in a fucking hat? This thing is just a joke. It's a joke. It's laughable. It's so incorrect and so self-evidently. It's embarrassing.
Yeah.
So, there's so much more here, but all it would be is a litany of me telling you what Joseph got wrong about that or that or that. It's incorrect through and through.
I'm starting to think that you don't actually believe in this church anymore.
I will tell you something interesting about the Pearl of Great Price, though. It does hold an interesting distinction. And I don't know what other books have this distinction, but it is among a very small family of books that have been further away from the planet Earth than any other and returned safely. John Young, who was an astronaut on Apollo 16, carried a copy of the Pearl of Great Price to the moon.
Not the Book of Mormon, but the Pearl of Great Price?
Not the Book of Mormon, but the Pearl of Great Price. Because it's the one...
Really?
Well, the Pearl of Great Price has all of the Mormon planetary stuff in it.
Oh, shit.
So, yeah, that's... I believe the Bible has made that journey, and hopefully the Celestine prophecy, but I think that's it.
And something by Judy Blume, which I think,
Right.
I think Buzz Aldrin is a big fan. So I didn't know there was a Mormon lunar astronaut.
Yeah, I didn't either until I was doing this research. It was
And
like,
Mormons make such a giant fucking deal out of any sort of minor celebrity that's Mormon. I can't believe that we didn't grow up with that name.
Yeah, I should. I mean, it's John Young. God, it's got to be. But I didn't do much research into him. I kind of just found this towards the end, and I wonder if there was a falling out or something that precludes him from being the hero that you'd think he would be. Anyway,
Right.
There's your Book of Abraham, at least as bite-sized a description of it as I could possibly do.
Yeah, it's embarrassing. It's laughable.
Yeah.
And they're stuck with it.
Mm-hmm.
It's like all of his stuff. It's just made up from whole cloth, which would be fine if he just claimed that it was made up from whole cloth or didn't give it the provenance that he gave it. But he done fucked himself.
Yeah, like the Quran doesn't have this problem because Muhammad just said, it came to me.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's such an easy
right.
workaround, and yet he didn't avail himself of it.
And yet here we are.
Stupid Joe.
Okay.
All right, well there you go. Thanks for bookending our salute to Abraham's.
You're welcome.
We'll continue that next week and the week after that. So
No, we won't. Don't worry, we won't. You can keep listening.
let's get
You're
the
safe.
fuck out of here.
Nobody's listening by now.
Yeah.
Okay, bye.
Let's make like a mummy and bury this.
Well, friends, that's Abraham for this week's Abraham.
Yes. We'd love to hear from you. If you have an Abraham you'd like to Abraham, please send us an email at howto@howtoheretic.com.
Or you could leave us a voicemail about Abrahaming however you Abraham it at 903-88-HOW-TO-ABRAHAM, which is 903-884-6986 Abraham. Also on Twitter at HowToHereticAbraham.
And as always, thanks to our lovely and special Abrahams.
Yes, and thanks to Abraham Layton for editing the show.
And thanks to all of you, dear friends, for Abraham in.
Abraham!
Bye.
Bye!